The white delivery van rolled across the Wyoming plains, its tires biting into the frozen dirt road as wind hissed through the open fields. Daniel Reeves, age 29, tightened his grip on the steering wheel. His route had taken longer than expected, and the last town on his manifest, Brenton, wasn't even on his GPS. He had received the location through a private contract, well paid, but intentionally vague. A storm shadowed the horizon, bruised clouds spreading like spilled ink. He didn't fear storms. He feared silence. Brenton appeared suddenly, like someone had dropped it from the sky. A handful of houses, a diner, a post office, and a church. The lights burned warmly behind frosted windows. Smoke rose from chimneys. The town looked alive, like a postcard from 1962. Yet when Daniel stopped the van, he noticed nothing moved. No people walked the streets. No cars hummed. No dogs barked. Only the soft wind curled between the buildings. His first delivery was to House 102, a red-painted home with a white porch. The front door stood open. A casserole steamed on the dining table. A radio played gently beside a half-finished jigsaw puzzle. Daniel called out, "Package delivery." His voice bounced around empty walls. He waited. The silence felt wrong, not sleepy, but erased. He checked the living room. A coat hung on a chair. A phone lay unlocked on the sofa, screen glowing with a text notification. "We need to talk. Everyone knows." Everyone knows what? Daniel backed away, pulse rising. He stepped outside. Every house door seemed slightly open. Dinner plates sat served but untouched. Television screens flickered with news anchors talking to no one. He rushed into the street. "Hello? Anybody here?" The wind answered. Daniel wasn't easily scared. But something about seeing normal life frozen mid-breath made him want to run. Instead, he reached for rational explanations: evacuation, gas leak, tornado warning. Yet everything electric still ran. A pot continued to boil on the diner stove. And no warning sirens had sounded. He delivered packages because it was his job, but now he wondered whether he was delivering something into the silence. As he returned to the van, he glimpsed something from the corner of his eye, a flashing light in the church window. Morse code. He squinted. One word repeated. "Run." Daniel jogged toward the town center, ignoring the instinct clawing up his throat. "Document everything," his brain repeated that phrase. His dashcam was on. His body camera was recording. If something happened to him, the footage would outlive him. At the diner, a plate of eggs sat half-eaten beside a steaming cup of coffee. The chair was pushed back, like someone had just stood up. A newspaper headline read, "Local council in scandal over human trails." Not trials. Trails. Daniel blinked. Human trails? A typo? A metaphor? He grabbed the paper. The article claimed the council funded experimental surveillance tracking, mapping civilian movements using unauthorized implants. It praised the council for visionary safety measures, while an opposing column called it an ethical disgrace. The author names were missing. Daniel shivered. He felt watched. He crossed the street to the church. The oak door was ajar. Inside, hymn books lay open, another pot of coffee steamed in the corner, and coats hung neatly on hooks. The silence seemed defensive, like the building was trying not to breathe. In the pews, he found notebooks, meeting transcripts, all unsigned. They described late-night arguments about something called the Wyoming Proximity Grid, a network designed to monitor not just locations, but mental patterns, predicting behavior, identifying risk thoughts, bypassing warrants. A council member had called it the future of justice. Another called it the end of humanity. The final page read, "They approved it. It starts tomorrow." Daniel felt sick. Did the town leave voluntarily? Or were they taken? His heartbeat hammered. He backed out of the church. And then he noticed it, a shoe lying in the street, a woman's running sneaker, untied, abandoned mid-stride. Like everyone left at the exact same second. As Daniel approached the van, the sky darkened. A storm wasn't coming. Night arrived early, swallowing the sun like a curtain drop. He needed help. And suddenly, there was only one solution. Daniel dialed 911. The operator answered quickly, her voice professional. "What's your emergency?" He explained everything: open doors, hot food, working power, missing people, the newspaper, The church transcripts. At first she treated it as a joke or misunderstanding. But as he kept talking, her tone changed. There are no towns registered under the name Brenton in Wyoming. He froze. I'm standing in it. She asked for coordinates. His map showed nothing. No road name. No county. Not even a landmark. She whispered, as if someone might hear. Stay in your vehicle. Daniel told her he wasn't alone, he felt watched. She replied, officers are being dispatched. He asked how long. 20 minutes. He hung up, locked the doors, and sat in the driver's seat, heart thundering. The radio in his van crackled. It was tuned to nothing, yet sound forced itself through, like voices buried underwater. He lowered the volume. He didn't want to hear voices that shouldn't exist. He stared at the houses. Lights flickered in a pattern, almost deliberate. Window lights blinking like coded signals. Was someone communicating? Or was the town itself alive with leftover data from a vanished population? Daniel spotted a notebook among his deliveries. Something written in black marker. Do not open inside town. His breath caught. He tore the package open. Inside were portable hard drives, new, sealed, and a letter stamped with a federal seal. United States Department of Rural Infrastructure. Confidential. He didn't understand what rural infrastructure needed with hard drives and secret instructions. Unless that infrastructure was a polite word for surveillance architecture. Was he delivering the missing piece of a grid designed to monitor mines? He checked his phone. No signal. No data. Only the emergency SOS option. 20 minutes felt like a year. He turned off the engine, sat back, and closed his eyes. Then something tapped the roof. Pulling a breath through tight lungs, he opened his eyes slowly, looked up through the windshield. Something stood on the diner roof. A human silhouette. Perfectly still. Watching him. Daniel didn't scream. He stared. The figure didn't move, not a muscle. The pose was unnatural. Hands at sides. Head tilted. Like a statue carved out of night. He blinked hard. Still there. He tried to rationalize, maybe it was a mannequin. But mannequins don't watch people. And mannequins don't appear on rooftops of abandoned towns illuminated by dinner plates still steaming. He locked the doors again, though it felt meaningless. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. Why did you open the package? Daniel's fingers trembled. He typed, who is this? No response. The figure remained on the roof, unmoving, like it was waiting for his fear to grow roots. In the distance, Daniel heard faint sirens. Relief washed through him like warm water. He leaned forward, eyes on the road. Flashing lights, but wrong. No red, no blue. Just white beams sweeping the trees. Not police. Headlights. The vehicle stopped at the edge of town. A dark SUV. No markings. A man stepped out, wearing a suit. He didn't look like law enforcement. He looked like someone who didn't need a badge. Daniel stayed silent, watching. The man opened the SUV door, addressing someone inside. Another figure emerged, wearing a white coat. Scientific. The rooftop silhouette shifted, just barely, like acknowledging their arrival. The suited man pointed at Daniel's van. The man in the coat nodded. Everything inside Daniel screamed, drive. Now. But his legs felt locked. He watched a second SUV arrive, then a third, each filled with men dressed like federal agents or corporate executives. Not police. Not saviors. Collectors. The suited men carried cases, metal, clean, stamped with the same exact symbol on Daniel's undelivered box. The department. In the reflection of the windshield, Daniel noticed something behind him. A child's handprint on the glass. Fresh. He spun around in his seat. Nothing. The figure on the diner roof raised one arm, pointing directly at the van. The men noticed. They rushed forward. Daniel slammed the engine on. The van hesitated, then roared. He sped down the main street, hard drilling through his ribs. But the road out of town was gone. Just blackness. Like the town ended in unfinished world. Daniel hit the brakes hard, gravel skidding beneath the tires like broken glass. The road that should have led out of Brenton simply vanished into pitch-black emptiness. No trees, no fences, just a sharp edge where the world seemed to stop. His headlights shone into a void so complete it looked painted. No. No, 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 he whispered. He reversed instinctively, his breath loud in the cabin. Then he heard it. A single slow step on the roof. Then another. Deliberate. Heavy. Confident. Daniel froze. Every primal instinct told him not to look up, but his mind needed to confirm what his body already knew. Something was on top of the van. He held his breath and listened. A third step. A settling weight pressing above him. The figure from the diner roof? Or someone else entirely? He looked at his mirror. The suited men with their cases had reached the town center, speaking urgently, pointing toward the van and the empty edge of the world. One man, tall with sharp features, pulled out a device the size of a remote. He pressed a button. A pulse moved through the air like invisible thunder. The streetlights flickered in unison, all at the same rhythm. Blink, blink, blink. A pattern. Daniel's radio slammed to life, spewing static and fragmented words, like dozens of overlapping voices whispering through barbed wire. Patterns remain. Subject escaped. Remove carrier. Then silence. The roof creaked above him. Daniel couldn't wait. He slammed the gear into drive and turned sharply, circling back toward the town square, not because it was safe, but because it was the only reality left. He passed the empty houses again, lights blinking like coded distress signals. As he sped by the diner, he glanced upward. The rooftop figure was gone. He felt a drop of cold sweat slide down his back. The suited men saw his approach and scattered behind vehicles. One of them lifted a hand, shouting something Daniel couldn't hear. The man in the white coat stepped forward, calm, like a professor explaining a lesson. Daniel hit the brakes 10 feet away. The scientist raised both hands. His face was drawn, eyes hollow. "You opened the package," he said. Daniel rolled his window halfway. "Who are you? Where is everyone?" The scientist hesitated. He looked genuinely pained. "They're here," he said softly. "Just not in the way you think." Daniel felt anger replace fear. He opened the door and stepped out, staying close to the van. "What did you do to them?" The suited man with the sharp features approached. His voice was smooth, like a politician who practiced empathy in a mirror. "Mr. Reeves, nobody did anything to them. They made a choice." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Dinner plates and boiling pots don't look like a choice." The man's expression didn't change. "They chose a legacy." A fourth vehicle arrived, sleek, dark, completely silent. Two armed personnel stepped out wearing unmarked uniforms. Their faces revealed nothing. Daniel backed toward the van. The scientist spoke again, gently, as if speaking to a child waking from a dream. "You delivered the activation drives. They were meant to complete the mapping. Real-time cognitive synchronization. A town that functions as one mind. No crime. No conflict. Shared thought, shared peace." Daniel stared at him. "That isn't peace. That's erasing people." The scientist shook his head. "It's preserving them." Thunder rolled across the field, but no storm existed. Just the sound of something structural shifting. The suited man stepped forward with certainty. Brenton volunteered. Every citizen signed consent. "We tested the proximity grid here because these people believed in community more than individuality." Daniel's stomach twisted. "You're lying." The articles in the diner, humans being tracked without permission. The man smiled faintly. "Public outrage is part of the process. Controversy accelerates validation." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "And the missing authors? The unsigned transcripts? Convenient." The suited man's smile widened just enough to reveal the truth. "They became the data." Then, that sound again. Footsteps. On the roof of the church this time. Everyone turned. The figure stood there, still as stone. Only now Daniel could see details. It was a woman, hair long and dark, clothes torn like she had run from something. Her eyes were wide, not empty, but awake with primal terror. She looked at Daniel. Not at the men. Not at the world. At Daniel. And she screamed. Not a word. Just a scream full of every horror in Brenton. The scientist flinched. The suited man pulled out a device. Daniel didn't think. He ran. Behind him, the woman jumped from the church roof, landing hard on the pavement, but she stood, bones bending at impossible angles, moving like her body wasn't allowed to break. Daniel dove into the van. He started the engine. The suited man shouted, "Stop him!" The headlights caught the woman's face. She mouthed one silent word, "Run." And Daniel did. Daniel didn't remember steering, only the raw desperation of escaping Brenton before the men with polished shoes and blank faces reached him. The van fishtailed across gravel, throwing dust like smoke behind a burning house. His breath shook, and his mind replayed the image of the woman bending like her bones no longer subscribed to human rules. He should have crashed. He should have gone over the edge where the road fell into nothing. Instead, as he shot forward, the world reappeared. Trees blinked into existence. Fence posts rose in the headlights. The flat void turned into a snow-covered hillside. Like the landscape had been waiting for him to choose the right direction. He didn't question it. He drove. 5 miles passed in a blur, then 10. The van finally rolled to a stop beneath a cluster of pines. Daniel turned off the engine and sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor him back to sanity. The woman's scream vibrated inside him, truth stripped of language. He thought about calling the police again. But what would he say? He wasn't even sure Brenton existed on a map. The darkness outside felt thinner than the kind he'd left behind, like the forest air still belonged to the real world. Daniel forced himself to breathe evenly. He reached over and touched the dashcam. The little red dot glowed. It had recorded everything. Footsteps on the roof. The suited men. The woman falling and rising. Proof. His hand shook as he removed the memory card and tucked it into his wallet. He felt an anchor, however fragile. Then he remembered the drives. The sealed hard drives he'd opened against orders. He dug into the passenger seat and found the padded envelope. Inside, 6 black drives nestled like quiet seeds. The government seal on the letter made his skin crawl. Daniel pulled out the folded paper. United States Department of Rural Infrastructure. Confidential Activation Protocol, Grid Enclosure Unit. Below the heading, lines of clinical language unfurled. Driver is carrier. No local handling permitted. Activation triggers aligned upon arrival in mapped proximity. Drives contain final neural layers. Subject community synchronized upon read state. Daniel read it again. And again. Until the words no longer sounded like science fiction but like a confession whispered by someone proud of their crime. He found a second page, handwritten, rushed, almost frantic. Different ink, different intent. If you open this, don't let them take it. They lied. Consent was manufactured. They mapped us first, signed our names later. Don't deliver. Don't return. Get out before it finishes. Brenton isn't a town anymore, it's a reflection trapped in a loop. We're echoes. Don't let them complete the circle. No signature. Daniel stared into the darkness through the windshield. A reflection trapped in a loop. He thought of the empty houses with hot food still steaming. He thought of the repeating text on the church window, "Run." He thought of the woman's eyes, not vacant like data, but burning with terror and resistance. She wasn't part of the grid. She was outside it. How? Daniel opened the glove compartment and pulled out the van's tiny emergency flashlight. The beam swept across the floor. He saw something he didn't notice before, a second envelope, tucked beneath the rubber mat. Plain white. No seal. He unfolded it. Inside, a USB stick and a single sentence. Show them before they erase it. His heart thudded. The handwriting matched the note inside the first envelope. Someone inside Brenton had planned for failure. They knew the experiment, the mapping, the erasure, might collapse. They prepared a message in a bottle. Daniel looked at the USB. It felt heavier than plastic, like carrying people. He slid it into his pocket next to the memory card. Snow began to fall, thin shards drifting across the windshield. The clock on the dash read 2:44 a.m. He needed to reach a place with power. Internet. Something outside the reach of men who spoke like justice and acted like thieves wearing government emblems. As he prepared to drive again, his phone lit up by itself. Emergency signal. Text message. No number. They're still here. Daniel swallowed. Another message blinked into existence. Brenton isn't abandoned. It's occupied. His pulse hammered. He typed, "Who is this?" A minute passed. A third reply. "You saw her. She broke the pattern." Daniel stared at the glowing screen, his breath fogging the glass. The woman. Whoever sent the message knew he had seen her. Knew she was the only one moving freely, the only one screaming instead of obeying. His fingers typed before he could think. What happened to the others? No response. Another snow gust rattled branches. Daniel gritted his teeth, started the engine again, and headed east, away from Brenton, his headlights cutting through the increasingly thick snow. 10 minutes into the drive, a sign appeared through the trees. Welcome to Brenton, population 243. Daniel slammed the brakes. He stared in disbelief. He had never left. The van idled in front of the same wooden sign he'd passed on the way in. Only this time, the slogan beneath it had changed. Instead of, "Where community comes first," the new words were carved beneath the population count. "You're part of us now." Snow continued falling, silent as the town that waited. Daniel stared at the sign until his breath frosted the glass. Population, 243. Same number as before. But the message carved beneath it, "You're part of us now," hadn't been there. Someone had changed the town's welcome sign in the time it took him to flee 5 miles, crash through reality, and return to the same place. Or maybe time didn't matter here. Maybe the loop wasn't measured by miles, but by decisions. His decision. He stepped out of the van, snow crunching beneath his boots. His flashlight beam shook as he inspected the carving. The letters were clean, recent. Not weathered. As if cut with purpose, not age. He ran his fingers along the ridge of the letter P. Fresh sawdust clung beneath the snow. "Someone is still doing this," he whispered. Not a memory. Not a ghost town of data. Someone with hands. Someone alive. But who? And why stay behind while the others disappeared into whatever grid had swallowed Brenton whole? A distant noise cut through the night, a low hum. Like electrical wires vibrating in a high wind, though the air lay still. Daniel returned to the van, locked the doors, and stared at the sign again through the windshield. "You're part of us now." Something about the phrase made his skin crawl more than the empty streets had. The first time he entered Brenton, the town looked like life had paused mid-sentence. This felt like life had replaced his sentence with its own. He started the engine and turned back down the road. This time he drove slowly, searching for what he missed. A mile later, he found it. A turnoff he didn't remember, a narrow lane between 2 pines, marked by nothing except wheel tracks half covered by snow. The tracks were fresh, the snow barely filled in. Someone had driven through here less than an hour ago. Against all logic, Daniel felt relief. A survivor. A witness. Someone to answer the questions clawing at his mind. He turned in. The lane led downhill to a clearing lit by moonlight filtering through bare branches. At the bottom sat a small farmhouse, its windows dark, its chimney cold. Yet tire tracks ended right at the porch steps. Daniel parked the van quietly and stepped out. He checked his pockets, dashcam memory card, USB stick, confidential documents, all still there. Physical truth felt like armor. He mounted the porch. The front door hung slightly open, like every door in Brenton. He pushed it gently. Inside, the air smelled like old wood and something metallic, blood or rust. "Hello," he called. No answer. He stepped into a narrow hallway lined with framed photos. The images showed smiling faces, families at fairs, couples at barbecues, graduation caps floating into the sky. All normal. Except for one detail, in every photo, one face was blurred, smeared like fog over glass. The woman. Long dark hair. Wide eyes. Standing at the edge of every moment like she didn't belong. Daniel's pulse spiked. Someone had tried to hide her existence, retroactively. He moved deeper into the farmhouse until he found the kitchen. Papers covered the table, held down by a ceramic mug. He raised the flashlight. Not papers. Medical scans. Diagrams of brain patterns, neural pathways, waveform graphs. Most had one phrase scrawled across them in frantic handwriting. "We were never asked." Another note, smaller, neat. Consent was forged to justify activation. They planned the grid for years, Brenton was the pilot study. "We were promised better healthcare, clean water, jobs. Instead, they used us to map the mind. They wanted a town that thinks like one person. No arguments. No rebellion. No freedom." Daniel felt the sick weight of every word. Then he heard the floorboard creak behind him. He spun. The woman stood in the doorway. Same torn clothes. Same eyes full of terror. But now he saw something else, awareness. A mind fighting the gravity of something bigger than her. She raised a shaking hand and pointed at the papers. You read them, she whispered. Her voice sounded unused, raw. Daniel nodded. What happened to everyone? Her lips trembled. They're still here. He waited. In the houses. In the lights. In the signals. Their minds are fused into the grid. They can't move their bodies anymore. But they think together. They see everything. They tried to pull me too. But something in me broke the pattern. Daniel remembered her scream, a sound of rebellion against a network of silent thought. Why you? He asked. She hesitated. I never signed. I never agreed. They needed a perfect circle, 243 minds, all connected. They didn't have me. And without me, the pattern failed. She stepped forward, desperate urgency sharpening her words. They sent you to complete it. Daniel's heart dropped. You mean the drives? Yes, she cut him off. Your delivery wasn't packages. It was completion. Those drives are the final layer. Once installed, I disappear into them. And you take my place. A new 243. Daniel stared at her. He wasn't a witness. He was the replacement. His role wasn't to see the truth, it was to merge into it. She gripped his arm, eyes burning with fear and fury. You have proof. You have what they tried to erase. If you leave now, you can expose them. But if you stay, if they find you, there won't be a you anymore. Just another silent mind in a town that smiles on postcards. Outside, the hum grew louder. Vehicles. Engines approaching. She looked toward the window. They found you. Daniel glanced at the USB in his pocket. The truth no one wanted, because it broke everything. He grabbed the papers, the scans, everything he could hold. The woman pushed him toward the door. Go, she said. He hesitated. What about you? She smiled sadly, like someone already half-ghost. I'll stay outside the circle, as long as I can. Then she whispered the same words she had mouthed from the church roof. Run. And Daniel did, into the freezing dark, carrying voices that hadn't been silenced yet. Daniel's boots hit the frozen earth in frantic rhythm as he sprinted through the trees, clutching the scatter of papers against his chest. Snow stung his eyes, turning the world into a blur of white streaks and dark trunks. Behind him, engines roared, a coordinated hunt through a rural silence that once promised peace. He didn't look back. If he did, fear would slow him. And slowing meant being caught, not by guns, but by a concept, the town that thinks in one voice. Branches whipped his arms. The weight of his choices pressed into his lungs. Somewhere in the chaos, he found enough breath to ask the question no one ever wants to ask themselves. What if running is too late? Headlights flickered through the trees like searching eyes. Men shouted commands, a language meant to control, not to comfort. Daniel veered left, down a rocky slope, his foot sliding. He nearly fell, crashed against a log, then rolled behind it just as beams swept over the clearing. He pressed a hand over his mouth, fighting the panic clawing at his throat. The men scanned the trees methodically. There were no dogs. No drones. They didn't need them. They already knew where he was going. They had the pattern, even if it wasn't complete. When the lights moved on, Daniel crawled toward a fallen fence. His van was gone. The lane was blocked by two black SUVs. The government had arrived in force. The farmhouse was invisible now behind the trees, like it had hidden itself to protect its last witness. Daniel followed the tree line until he reached the main road. There, just beyond the curve, a shape loomed, an old ranger station. A dirt road branched off toward it, unplowed but still drivable if he could hotwire something inside. He sprinted again. As he neared the building, he spotted an old pickup truck half buried in snow. No keys, but the door was unlocked. He threw the papers onto the passenger seat, rummaged under the steering column, praying his years of teenage mistakes hadn't faded from his memory. Spark. Twist. The engine coughed and sputtered like a dying animal. Then, miraculously, it started. Daniel floored the gas. Gravel kicked up in icy shards. His heart surged with something almost like hope. For 30 seconds, he believed escape might be possible. Then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He shouldn't answer, but he did. A voice, calm, measured, male, spoke. You can't outrun the pattern, Daniel. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded sideways. The voice continued, smooth as a lecture on ethics. You think this is a scandal. You think this is control. You don't understand what Brenton was meant to be. Daniel's throat tightened. What was it meant to be? He spat. Silence. Then, a world without loneliness. He hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger floor. Loneliness. Every horror now dressed in philosophy. He drove. Miles melted in the dark. Pine trees gave way to open fields. The road widened, real asphalt, real markers. Daniel stopped only when he reached a gas station, small and weathered, but lit. A solitary overnight clerk stared at a phone behind bulletproof glass. Civilization. Daniel parked, grabbed the papers, the drives, the USB, and walked toward the counter. He expected disbelief. Instead, the clerk, a man in his 50s with tired eyes, looked up slowly. "You all right?" he asked. Daniel nodded, then shook his head. He placed the USB stick on the counter. "I need a computer," he said. "Something with internet. Do you have anything?" The man hesitated, then pointed toward the back corner where a dusty public computer sat beside a coffee machine. Daniel moved fast. The machine hummed to life like it was waking from 10 years of sleep. He plugged in the USB. Folders appeared. /record/scan/footage. He clicked footage. A single file. DCAM_47.mkv. He double-clicked. The video loaded slowly, time-stamped from the moment he entered Brenton. The footage showed the van approaching the welcome sign. Snow drifting. Nothing unusual. Then the town appeared. Lights glowing warm. Windows bright. Streets empty. And on the diner roof, a figure. It wasn't standing. It tracked him, turning its head as the van passed. Perfectly synchronized with every movement. Daniel's stomach knotted. The footage continued, him entering the first house. The food steaming. The half-finished puzzle. His voice echoing, package delivery. The camera captured everything the eye can't process. In the footage, every TV in the town flickered. Every radio glitched. Every light pulsed, in time with his heartbeat. Then the recording showed something he never saw. Reflections in the windows. Dozens of blurred faces behind the glass, watching. Not physically present. But present in the circuit. Brenton wasn't empty. It was crowded. Daniel felt his pulse in his teeth. He scrubbed forward in the timeline. The moment he called 911, his voice shaky. The van interior. Then the figure on the diner roof again, closer now. The camera zoomed slightly. Autofocus locked. The face came into view. Not a woman. Not a man. But multiple faces layered together, like a composite image, an impossible portrait built from hundreds of eyes, mouths, expressions. The grid wasn't one person. It was all of them, threaded into a single presence. Daniel recoiled from the screen. Behind him, the clerk stared wide-eyed. What is that?" he whispered. Daniel's voice was thin. "That's Brenton." He pulled the USB, grabbed the papers, and turned, then froze. Through the glass entrance doors, a black SUV rolled silently into the parking lot. Daniel backed away. The clerk locked the doors automatically, panic overriding thought. Two figures stepped out. One wore a suit. The other carried a metal case. The suited man looked directly at the gas station windows, his voice muffled through the glass yet somehow clear, as if the grid spoke through him. "You've already shared it." Daniel looked at the computer screen. Uploading? 98%. 99%. 100%. Email sent. Servers backing it up across newsrooms, whistleblower sites, cloud drives he didn't even realize he selected. The truth was out. For a moment, no one moved. Then the suited man's expression changed, not rage, but resignation. "You don't understand what you've done." Daniel stepped forward. "Yes," he said. "I do." He nodded toward the screen. "I reminded them they had a choice." The man stared at him, like someone looking at a fracture that can't be glued back together. Then he turned, got into the SUV, and drove away without a word. No guns. No threats. Just departure. Daniel stood in the fluorescent hum of the gas station, shaking, half from fear, half from the realization that survival wasn't victory. Revealing truth is easier than living with it. The clerk approached slowly. "Hey, kid," he said. "You want coffee? And maybe, we call someone?" Daniel exhaled, finally letting his muscles unclench. "Yes," he said. "Call everyone."